You're listening to the Kansas State Department of Education's Insight Podcast, where we explore the people, policies, and progress shaping education in Kansas. In this episode, we dive into strategies to prevent the summer slide and help students stay engaged, learning, and thriving all summer long.
Hello, Kansas educators. Randy Watson, Commissioner of Education. We're back with KSDE Insight, Episode 3. We're so excited to be with you. I hope that you have tuned in to our first couple episodes, and if you haven't, well, this is your opportunity to catch up, because, in some podcasts, they're on like episode 1348, and you never can get caught up. Well, we're so new that you can get caught up in the podcast, and we have a wonderful topic today, and even more wonderful guest. It's oftentimes when we have our guests on, they're great people, and what I can say about our three guests today, they're not only great people, they're great friends, they're great colleagues. I admire their work, and you should too, because we have a little program in Kansas called the Kansas Teacher of the Year program, where every year, out of hundreds of winners locally, we get to select 8 of those winners to become part of our what we call the KTOY, Kansas Teacher of the Year team, for that year, and they're just remarkable people that go on to learn even more things as they get to visit each other's classroom and change the world. And we have 3 people from those teams from given years, and 2 that ended up being the Kansas Teacher of the Year. And so we're going to get to meet them in just a second and share their expertise with you and parents and educators about things we can do to help kids. So with that, I'm actually going to just kind of go around the horn here and introduce you and let you tell a little bit about what you have been doing, currently doing, anything that you want our listeners to know about. And I think about that because when we get to Jerry will tell us all about how great it is to be retired, Brent.
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired. I'm sorry, Jerry. Semi-retired. That's it. All right. Dyane Smokorowski, Kansas Teacher of the Year. Just got to spend the weekend with you and a lot of other outstanding teachers down at Kansas Leads. Thanks for being here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, Dyane.
Well, hello, everyone. And I'm Dyane Smokorowski. Everybody calls me Smoke. It's just easier to remember. I should tell you that it really came down that I married Smoke, and then I got to be Mrs. Smoke. That's how that happened. But I currently serve as the coordinator of digital literacy for the Wichita Public Schools, which means I lead the educational technology team. And involved in some of that work is I lead the Adventure Virtual Career Day, Kansas Day, Safari Days. I run some of those for all kids across Kansas. And then part of the Kansas Leads team, and just seeing what we can do to reimagine education with technology such as AI. Doing a lot of AI goodness these days.
Oh, it does so many great things, with teachers and summer trips and just engaging them. It's just so much magic that you do.
I do love a teacher field trip, I have to tell you.
I know. and Japan soon, right?
Yes.
You told me that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going with book bag tours to Japan.
Wow, it's not like just going to Abilene or Kansas or somewhere. That's really great.
Got to see all the Disney parks, really.
Brent Wolf, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm Brent Wolf and proud principal of Derby Hills Elementary School in Derby, Kansas. When I went into teaching, it was years ago where the license was a K-9 degree, and I wanted like second or third was my goal, and I got offered a kindergarten position and a middle school position, and it was one of the hardest decisions of my life. Looking back, it should have been a lot easier, but I picked the middle school and spent a lot of years teaching middle school and loved it, but then went into administration, and within the first couple days of being at the elementary school, I said, these are my people. So this is my 5th year at Derby Hills, and absolutely love it.
Yeah, and just, again, done extraordinary things. And you didn't mention even a stint on local school board.
Oh, yeah.
It gave some service there, too.
Yes, I was on the school board for a little over 8 years during COVID and lots of great opportunities. But it was a time that I learned so much and got to network with some really, really important and good perspectives.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. And Jerry Powers. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell a little bit about
Okay,
yourself.
a little bit about myself. I was in the DeSoto School District as a reading specialist, taught third grade at first for 28 years. And my last 3 years there, I was the district reading specialist. So I was working more with teachers on how we needed to really get up to speed when it came to structured literacy and what the science of reading was teaching us. And I loved that. I also worked with middle school and high school teachers trying to figure out what can we do better to meet the needs of struggling readers. So that's my real passion, is just struggling readers. What do they need? How can we help them? And that's why after I retired in June, when I was offered to be a teacher leader consultant in the dyslexia early literacy under Dr. Lori Curtis, I jumped at that because that's what I love. And I spend a lot of time going out and talking with middle school, high school teachers about how we can help struggling readers in content area, which is shocking to me because that's not necessarily where my jam has been, but I know those kids. I work with those kids, and I know that what we did in elementary, a lot of it's the same. It's all about the teacher, and you see that more and more, the teacher knowledge, the teacher relationship. And so this topic was really interesting to me about summer learning loss. And I think that's what drives me more than anything is I know what I don't know, and there's a lot I don't know. And so opportunities like this give me a chance to just keep learning and figuring out what we can do better.
Yeah,
Just
you
better.
know, the thing that amazes me about all three of you, and so it's so typical of our Teacher of the Year team, it's you bring a high level of skill, and you always bring this quest for, I want to learn more, and I want to learn from each other more. And so hopefully we're going to give parents and educators some ideas today, and we're probably going to learn from each other just about the saying that we're going to commonly use a term today. We just want everyone, I'm going to throw it out there right off the bat, called the summer slide, which is a regression that we see with kids over the summer from where they were when they left at the end of whatever grade they were in this school year. And then when they come back in August, there's this learning loss that happens in some kids, and we don't see it in some other kids. And what could we do to prevent that or help that or actually show gains in the summer versus that loss? So that's really the topic, that we're going to delve into. And again, free discussion, about whatever you're thinking about. And if, people jump in and offer something that triggers something for you, please jump in. So let me just kind of frame it this way. We know that there are two big buckets, I call them buckets, of things that we really want students to have that tilt the odds that student will be more successful from third grade to fourth grade or ninth grade to 10th grade, or as they exit school into young adulthood. Academic skills are certainly one of those. Literacy, mathematics, STEM, we're a heavy STEM state, but if you have a high level of academic knowledge and application, you tend to do pretty well in life. But there's this other set of skills, and the other bucket are what we call Kansas Can competencies, the interpersonal, the intrapersonal skills that are gained from project-based learning, and where kids are involved in activities, or they're involved in having to craft speeches or showing up on time and working in teams. And we know that when students have those skill sets, and they're wide skill sets in high levels, the odds are they become really successful at the next stage of their life, right? And so the topic today is what happens over the summer. This great, for me, an old guy, it was, Randy, get out of the house, go play with your friends. We'll see you when the lights come on, right? And you have to come home. And you were just kind of on your own. And we can lament about the good old days and whether they were or not. But can we just talk about what you've either seen in your own kids, what you see in the kids that you have now? What happens in the summer? Because from about Memorial Day to about the second or third week in August, we typically don't have kids in school. That's And we could argue about why is that. We all used to go farm. I mean, that was the reason, but we still do that. So I'm just going to open it up, and anyone can jump in. What is this? So, what do we see? What happens in the summer?
And I think when you came around maybe five, I don't know how long ago, and you did a tour of kind of what Kansas education is looking like, and you went all over across the state, and you gave us a history of how school is set up. And like you said, summer was set up for harvesting time in Kansas for many families so school would pause and students would go and work on the farm. And we know that learning is all about experiences in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And anybody that I know that have ever worked in farming can tell you they have learned an enormous amount from both buckets, academic and competency, hard work. And so then I think those experiences helped that pause in formal education. Now I think the majority of our Kansas students are not harvesting in the summer. Some of them are having great experiences and learning and growing and great, but that summer slide affects so many students, and we need to get those buckets back out and unpause that learning.
And Brent, it's not as simple as we rewind the clock and okay, let's everyone go and harvest.
Right.
No, farms are becoming bigger. Custom cutting crews aren't even. I mean, they're it's just different, and so many of our kids are not having that experience. But Dyane, Jerry, your thoughts about what happens in the summer? What do you see?
Well, if we really think about who are the students that are impacted by the summer slide, it's typically not upper middle class. They get to go on vacations. Their parents, the students I taught, their parents could afford tutoring. So you have a real equity issue here. We've got to target, I think, more closely. We've got students, those disadvantaged students, so low SES. Who are the kids staying at home alone during the day? Who are our students on IEPs? They're more vulnerable. Who are our students with language disabilities, which I would include dyslexia under some of that umbrella? These students can't afford to go 3 months with little. They just can't. And we know what we need to do to help them. It's not just about reading, because that's not the only thing causing the summer slide. But for kids that have language delays, they really need some intentional types of environments that help to develop their vocabulary, their background knowledge, their syntax. When you really think about what learning needs to be, we know what we need to do. It's just targeting those students who are the most vulnerable is going to take a structured plan, and it's going to take money. And do we have the will to do that is the real question.
Yeah, and so I think if I heard, you're saying, okay, summer for some kids, that learning gets extended. I think you both are saying that, right? For some kids, learning gets extended either through experience or through conversation or through activities that are purposely planned by someone's adult in their life, their parents or grandparents, et cetera, right?
Yes.
And other families don't have that luxury to do that. And so we see either an extension or we see a regression.
Right. They need help. Like you say, well, they offer, like the Topeka Library offers beautiful things. I'm so impressed. But those kids who are most vulnerable, many of them, how do we get them there? So you're looking at if summer school costs, that's a hindrance for parents. I've got to get my child there. How do I even do that? And so I think we need to be much more intentional at looking at who are the students who are most vulnerable, what's getting in the way of them having a richer summer experience, and then help meet those needs. Instead of coming up with a plan that's void of talking with parents, building relationships with parents, it's like, let's talk with the people who need it, and then build a program around what they say would help them.
Yeah, excellent. Having a conversation with parents, before we went on air, I was talking about a parent that said to me, I'm a working single mom, and my kid, if just left at home, will just play video games all day. And I want more for him than that. But there's this disconnect. I want more. I don't know where the services are. I don't know how to do it. And I don't know how to work and get that. Diane, do you have any thoughts about what happens in the summer?
I think what's interesting is in the summer, I'm going to go back in time just a little bit to the 80s when I was
Ooh, big hair.
back in the moment.
I can smell it almost.
1900s.
Okay.
Almost, right? in the 70s, 80s, in the summertime, if we were indoors, if it was hot, you really had two things you could do. Play board games. You could go out and find the neighborhood kids. That's the third option, really, was sit inside with grandma and watch her daily soap operas and watch a lot of Price is Right. So we really had a lot of idle time that wasn't fulfilled with purpose. That hasn't changed in 2025. I think what's the difference is now there is such a sea of information, media options, from video to audio to gaming, that it's very easy for any human to get lost into this sea of information and decide what is really good, what isn't, and who can navigate me to things that actually can be purposeful. I think that's where the opportunity lies, is to guide families to say, hey, you might not know that your library in your small town in Augusta or in Caney Valley has some really great summer programs, coding options. They might even have some storytelling with puppet shows and all kinds of things that are enriching. You may not know about Sunflower Summer, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more, but stay tuned. And you may not know that there are resources that are free for families to say, hey, I don't really have the opportunity to get out much. We've got little people at home. It's hard to pack them up. It's nap time at certain times of the day. But if I can go into PBS Families and say, you know what, I've got some flour in my house. I got a little water. I have maybe a little baking soda or things. I wonder if I could create Play-Doh at home for my child. I just don't know how to do that. We'll talk about those things.
Every child must learn to read so they can read to learn. So, what are Kansas schools doing to make sure your child is learning this fundamental skill? With support and guidance from the Kansas State Board of Education and the State Department of Education, educators are receiving professional learning aligned to the science of reading, specifically a model of literacy instruction called structured literacy. It helps all students, including those with dyslexia, learn to read. To learn more about the science of reading and the Kansas Education Framework for Literacy, go to ksde.gov.
Yeah. So we had this problem that approximately we have 3 months off in the summer. Brent very well said, and most of the kids are not now engaging in work like they engaged with their families to either farm, ranch, and do those type of things. And even as kids get older in middle school and high school, Brent, if mom and dad even do have means, they're shuttling kids to all kinds of activities that, weights and football and, soccer practice, etc. So let's now move. What do parents that are working, kids that are home, Diane really said it well, kids have always been bored, right? That's age old. I'm bored. Every kid's been bored. In a generation where we didn't have a lot of digital devices, that boredom led us to have to go create something. And now I can watch TikTok for 3 hours, 4 hours, right? I can scroll, I can game. So there's all these digital that doesn't really impact learning, like maybe or even the interpersonal skills that maybe we develop. So I'm a parent that is all in. All right, let's say this. Now let's help. What do I have to do? What do I need to do? Because I'm going to work all summer. I have those kids. So what's the advice? What are we starting to move toward? What do we want to see?
I think Diane hit it on the nail when it's like purposeful and authentic interactions that help propel that learning. I think it were an opportunity that we could have K-12, pre-K-12, is most of us have parent-teacher conferences in the spring, and some are poorly attended. But what an opportunity for teachers who I believe are experts and are trained and licensed and know how to create a learning environment. What an opportunity it would be for those professional educators to present, you can do this, 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 this. Here's a way that you could do this, and just bombard and give resources to the parents that can and will. The hiccup or the speed bump is with the parents that can't or won't. Like I look at my high schooler right now, and she brings home math homework, and I think I'm decently qualified to do high school math, but I don't know how to teach the way that her Algebra 2 teacher is teaching. And so if her Algebra 2 teacher says, oh, just keep working on Algebra 2 this summer, and I'm an educator, and I have no idea how to set up her to continue learning Algebra 2. And I don't think I'm alone in that fight, but even scale it down to, I don't know how to teach my child how to read. I don't know how to read, or I don't know how to teach my child these interpersonal skills, or where I can find these interpersonal skills. And so I think we have to tap into giving parents those resources so that they can have them at their fingertips, so they can help. Because at the end of the day, kids are kids. They don't know how to structure their learning as much, because that's why we have teachers and parents. And if we give those adults, caring adults in their lives, a roadmap of what you can do, I think it will be a jump start on that summer learning.
So how do we go about doing that? Jumping.
Well, we know when it comes to what do we need to do for literacy, we know what would be best is that a really targeted, specific summer school plan. We know that. There's plenty of research out there that shows if you make it 5 to 7 weeks, if you spend a total of, say, about 34 hours in literacy, we know what we need to do, and there's agreement on that. But one of the things also that fascinated me is that we need to have a rigorous application plan for the teachers who are going to teach those students.
Yes.
We've got to have really highly qualified teachers who are given materials that we know are evidence-based, that know the students. We know what we need to do. It's just summer school is expensive. And the research also shows it's got to be multiple years because the effect is cumulative. And so we know all these things, but it really comes down to, do we as a society have a will to fork out the money that it's going to take to feed these children, to bus these children, to do whatever is necessary? There's also parents who say, my child doesn't really like to come. Okay, my kids didn't like to do a lot of things either, but they need that. They need that. And as adults, we have to surround children, like you were saying, with here's a roadmap, and this is what you need. And if you make it high quality, it makes a difference with kids.
Let's talk about structure, because I'm a proponent of, and I will whisper this so nobody will hear it, but year-round schooling with an asterisk. And instead of that long summer break, condensing that and making winter and fall and spring break maybe a little bit longer, so that the learning continues throughout the year, and there's not such a huge piece of time that goes without.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because if you look at who are the students who lose the most in literacy, it's your youngest, because they have the least amount of literacy under their belt. So your K1 students, the ones I served, oh my gosh, you'd start back at square one. Mm-hmm. And a lot of teachers are saying it's a good 4 weeks of review. Mm-hmm. Because so much has been lost. And so there does need to be a lot of time for kids to play and discover, but they need structure too. And I think that's our job as adults. How do we provide what children need, what we know they need? In
an environment where maybe the parents weren't very successful in school and the kids are saying, but I don't like school. And now you're asking me to go do more. So what's the environment that we ought to provide?
I think the first step is to show what's possible is available right now. For example, Common Sense Media, we're on a podcast today, right? And Common Sense Media this past year has gone in and pulled some of the best podcasts for kids and rated them to say, if your students are into fantasy and dragons and unicorns, there are some great podcasts that are enriching and open doors to imagination. And they've rated them saying these are safe for kids. If you have young people who are really into conversations, maybe it's the high school, middle school, who want to talk a little bit more about historical impacts around things that were with social justice, or maybe even true crime. There's a whole group of people around that. I don't know about those feelings. But if you have a high schooler, they again have given podcasts to say, these are a little bit friendlier. These I would stay away from. And guiding us to just dial in on the phones that we're with every day. If you're on that road trip, let's say you're doing the family trip out to, I don't know, the Grand Canyon, you have options to listen as a group. But also think about what you can do in your local park. You may have a playground that's very small with a place where there's a gazebo in the town square sort of a bit. Well, I wouldn't doubt if you talk to your local chamber of commerce or your library if there's going to be a summer music experience that's going to be happening there. I think it's really cool just to see what's happening in your local communities. Check out the summer events at your park and rec center. You're going to see there are amazing things that might be within walking distance of your house.
Yeah, I think that's great. And a lot of free activities. Jerry, you mentioned the Topeka Shawnee County Library and all kinds of library activities, park activities, all kinds of things.
Have any of you been geocaching?
Oh,
yes.
Tell us more.
That is a lot of fun.
It's been a minute, but yes.
Yeah, it's still out there.
Tell the friends. Tell the friends.
So it's kind of like a scavenger hunt, but you get an app on your phone, and there are free ones, or there are ones that you can pay for too. But all over the country, all over the world, perhaps.
Yes,
I know
it's global.
Definitely state. People have hidden containers, and they're called geocaches. And inside the container is normally a piece of paper that you put your name on that you found this container. And there are clues on the app that you go and find. And it leads you through GPS navigation to find these geocaches. And they're at like cemeteries, libraries, public places. And then you can see how many people have seen it before you, and you get to leave your name, and sometimes you can leave a prize or a trinket or something like that. It is so much fun and it's for all ages.
Yes.
I have 3 kids, and we've all gone, and they hide them in such unique places, like in a fence post or in a nook of a tree. And then when we go to the cemetery for Memorial Day, we always say, hey, remember that tree over there? There's a geocache up in that. And it's a lot of fun. And I can see high schoolers really even getting behind it and like taking little brother and little sister out on a trip. And like even in small towns, like I live in a small town, and I think we have probably over 100 geocaches. And so it could be a family event. It's just a lot of fun, and it's free, and it
opens doors to use other apps that identify plants in the area. So, oh, no, not there, friend. That's the poison ivy. Let's go over here to the left. But it does open up a family conversation. And it doesn't cost anything except a little foot power as you walk around. So, yeah. Jerry, what would you say about families and reading?
I think when we think about reading, we think about just getting kids more books. And we know that's not the answer. You think it is, but when you look at what kind of books do children choose, like at your school, they tend to choose books that they wish they could read, but they can't really read. So there have been studies around, do we give them more books? Hasn't really, that alone doesn't fix everything. Do we make sure they get books they're interested in and that align with kind of the range of what they could read on their own? It's not enough. As I look at what it really boils down to is who are the adults surrounding them. And so families can go somewhere like geocaching, which is amazing, but what's the kind of language that's going on while they're doing that? A lot of parents don't realize it's that give and take conversation. That's what got us into a lot of trouble in COVID, where we saw a lot of kids falling behind in language because they weren't getting that give and take of conversation. And the sweet spot for that is 18 to 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
Little kids, talking with them. And so parents need help on how do I develop language? It's simple things, but they just don't know. And you'd said earlier, Dyane, about communication. It really is about how do we get this really good information down to parents. And I think the bottom line is it's relationships. It's going and visiting with parents who feel very awkward in school. Maybe they struggled. Maybe they are still just learning English and they don't feel comfortable in a school. So how do we bridge that to make it more comfortable so that those students get the benefit of what we have to offer, not just by what their parents can or cannot do? Because a lot of parents, if they're working during the day, I can't take my kids to do that during the day.
Right.
So how can we help families during the day? And I had interviewed a high school, well, he's 33 now, but he really struggled in high school. And he's gone on to be a pipe fitter and done amazing with his life. Can do math that he flunked out of in high school. But he said, I went to this one school recently, Jerry, and they were building a house. Why didn't I get to do that? And I'm like, those are the kind of things that you look at for high school kids. What would they give their time to do? Not like, well, come to summer school, because they're thinking, I'm not going in that school in the summer. What kind of learning could we do that would give back to the community and that would give them a sense of purpose? We're going to have to really think differently. And by the time they're middle school and high school, you talk to them, they'll tell you what they want.
You mentioned 18 to 24 months as like prime language
Give
development
and take
piece.
yeah.
And I think it reminds me of Parents as Teachers, an organization that's birthed through, I think, age 5 or 6. And they have group connections. And they bring their kids to, and it's sometimes in the evenings, sometimes during the day. And they bring, parents go with their children, and parents talk to other parents, and kids talk to other kids, or babble to other kids, and parents talk to the kids. And it's a place where it's great for the parents, great for the kids, high language, safe parameters. Nobody's going to get hurt or anything. And
We hope not.
no. But then that kind of fizzles out. And I remember when I taught middle school, there were parents that were like, I just want to talk to other middle school parents to see are these the same things that I'm having trouble with. And middle schoolers can't drive. And so the ones, like, I lived way out in the country when I was in middle school. And so my interpersonal skills, I would talk to there was nobody out there. And so, but what could it be if my parents brought me to a group with other middle schoolers, and they did with church and 4-H and different other activities, but to have a space where parents could come and kids could come and learn from one another in language.
And how do you get those students there who we know are most vulnerable? We know who the teachers know who they are. And if the parents are unable to provide that kind of support, how do we as a system, we care enough about you that we've built a relationship with the parent, which is tough sometimes, and we will make sure your child gets there. We will help you. It takes, I saw downstairs that, they had a story time at 10 in the morning. Who can do that? And so it's really being intentional about who are our most vulnerable. How do we get them there?
So let's talk about two things in the remaining time we have. I want to talk about the system. So we're going to talk a little bit about to our educators around the system, and then I want to come back to the parents and how then we can give really good advice to parents about what they can do this summer. Let's talk about the system. I would argue that on the first Monday in June, I think that's June 2nd or 3rd this year. June 2nd, thanks, Dyane. On June 2nd, all of us, anywhere in Kansas, at 6 o'clock in the morning, bright early, we can walk into any high school in our state, and there will be something going on. I know it'll be happening in Derby, Kansas. And you're going to watch a weight room full of people,
That's true.
male, female,
Yeah.
all there. If you're an athlete of any type, you're in early morning weights, all right? Cross country to volleyball to football, you're in weights. And my guess is 90% of any student that's an athlete in that high school and middle school, I would argue it's middle school too, are there. I want to talk about how do you get there. And then after that, they break into other sessions. There go the football team for 7-on-7, soccer team's over there, the band kids and the twirlers are out on the field, the debaters are having debate camp, and this goes all summer. So much so, Keisha a few years ago said we're going to have a buffer week to give parents time off around the 4th of July because these kids don't have any downtime. Okay? When I ask superintendents how much is that costing you for the year, it's peanuts. They're paying stipends to a few coaches and everyone else is just doing it. So, Jerry, let's come back to your will. When I was coaching in high school, we weren't allowed to do that. Keisha didn't allow us to coach our own kids in the summer. That is a totally different game. So if you have a 7th grader or a 10th grader and they're involved in activities, I can tell you that your summer, you're having trouble finding a vacation.
We did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how do we do that system-wise for academics? Because I don't think it costs that much money. I think
if you pay teachers what they deserve,
yes,
it costs a lot of money.
But if we're just talking about young kids,
yeah,
and we're talking about maybe 90 minutes, and then we do some activity, you're not talking about all day, right? You got to get them there. We're going to have to feed them or provide some food. You could pay them full salary, but it's not a full day. And right, you wouldn't necessarily have to go a full day with students.
The research kind of shows 3 to 4 hours a day. So I think what that's including is literacy, but also learning.
Right,
learning.
All kinds of activities. Mm-hmm. So what would the structure, Brent, you're a principal, what would the structure have to be just to get just to invite the most needy kids with the best teachers and pay them full salary? How could we make that happen like we're making sports happen in Derby, Kansas, and in Madison, Kansas, and in Wichita, Kansas, and Eureka?
I think like April and May is a really hard time for any educator, teacher, para, principal, commissioner, I'm sure. April and May is tough, and it's because, I think mainly because students and staff have just devoted their everything since August, and so they see this finish line in April and May, and so they just are tuckered out by that time. And so I try and figure out, I don't want to be tuckered out in April and May. Because then I want June and July to happen. How can we set it up so that the finish line isn't in May? There's not a finish, like learning should not have a finish line. And I don't know what the structure looks like. I do like the idea of opportunities for all, and we figured it out on athletics, but on the learning piece, I don't know what the structure could look like.
Well, let's talk why they're there in the summer. Those who are taking weights and basketball agility camps and all the things that happen, right? Parents do pay for some of that to offset the cost. So if you are an agility coach, you're getting somewhat of a stipend from the cost of the camp. But they're there because they cannot wait to be there. Mm-hmm. And there's a fear of missing out the glory of Friday night football in the fall of, look, I've put all my effort and time and I built a community with these players. The FOMO is not the glory of winning the game, it's the glory of being together as a community all together on a Friday night. What we do in the education world is we look at April as testing month. So all of our energy goes to that. Nothing wrong with it, but we just really want to prioritize this as being something valuable. And then once that's over, many teachers say, wait a minute. This is where I can build enrichment. Now I have May to do field trips. This is where we can do art projects. We can have, well, I'll tell you, on May 9th at Linwood Elementary in Wichita, they're going to have the ultimate, like air quotes, ultimate field day. 53 stations. 53 stations. It is so fantastic. One of the stations is called Ants in Your Pants. And in that, the PE teacher has given to the station a pair of his old sweats. And then just like the game you would buy at Walmart where you toss the little plastic bugs into the pants, a child standing there with a very large pair of sweatpants, and other kids are tossing in plastic ants into this. I mean, how much fun is that? And another station is having a car wash where they've got a pipe that has holes in it, so you put a hose through it and the water drips out like a car wash, and kids ride little tricycles underneath it and go through a car wash. These are fear of missing out on the true joy of communication, learning, and play. That is what we need to be prioritizing to extend. May goes into June of, hey, we've really had a great time at field day. We got through prom. We gave Big Brother a high five as he graduated high school. But now you get to take learning to the next level. And we're going to go into art and singing and enrichment so that you cannot wait to come back and build community with your peers.
And I would add, literacy has to be a part of that learning, because for kids who are the most vulnerable, they lose so much. And you want to talk about the way they begin to see themselves as a learner. I had a first grade student one time, as she was growing up, she said, I learned what self-loathing was in first grade. They begin to see themselves very early as, I'm not smart, I'm not a learner. And they need, through those kind of activities you're talking about, Dyane, that's where they learn, I've got real pockets of strength, which they need to see, because in school all day they realize, I stink at writing, I stink at reading. They don't see themselves as capable. So summer school also, we've got to make sure that those really struggling readers, those most vulnerable, that they get that academic support so that they begin to see themselves as a capable, intelligent person.
Hunger doesn't take a vacation, and neither should access to healthy meals. This summer, the Kansas State Department of Education's Child Nutrition and Wellness Program, in partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is offering free meals and snacks to children ages 1 to 18. No application is necessary. Just visit a local meal site and get the nutrition kids need to stay energized all summer long. To find a meal site near you, visit cnw.ksde.gov.
You know, during the COVID time, I got to go, in the summer, we had some remarkable summer school. One was at Clay Center, Clay County Community School. And there they had teachers, and they also brought high school students to work with young kids, and they partnered with their community. So it was all day, and they would transport at various times, and parents could pick up at various times, if they wanted their kid. And what they did is that they intermixed really hard academic work, very short duration, and then they would take them to the swimming pool, right?
Perfect.
And they'd go swimming.
Yeah.
And then they would have chalk art downtown where they would decorate, and then they would decorate the stores. And anyway, they had it all planned out. And what I heard from teachers, a couple things: they were paid, they were fully paid.
Yes.
2, they were given control over the activities. And having that control, and they got to plan it. They got to plan the whole day, and they could improvise. And they had their team, and they could disperse how they wanted. And they told me, we're having a blast. They went 4 days a week, right? They took Fridays off, so everyone could have a long weekend. Took off around the 4th of July. But those are the type of things we're talking about, right? Where yes, there's meaningful hard work, and there's this play intermixed together. And, how do we do that so that the summer would fly by and you would have kids? In fact, they told me this. We have parents calling, my kid wants to stay all day. Like they don't want to come home. They love this so much. And then the parents were also telling him this is so good because I didn't have anywhere for my kids to go. And you've organized, the community was like, we love this. And because you've utilized all the community resources, like the library at 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. They would take kids to the library at 10 o'clock and just engage. So they were more like the concierge of the cruise ship, right?
Yes. There you go.
They were directing the activities as much as they were teaching the activities.
And you could have different adults doing that than those that are teaching literacy. Because for teaching literacy, we know You've got to have your highly qualified teachers. You've got to have your best. You've got to have good materials. That's why I love that we now have a structured literacy approach that's mandated. You got to have people that know what they're doing, because we don't have time to waste in the school year or the summer. These kids are behind. And so if you have teachers that are just doing it because they need the money or they don't know much about structured literacy, no, that's not going to work. So I'm thinking you could have those teachers who say, look, I do that all year long and I'm tired. They could come in and teach that portion and then leave. And then others could do those things that develop their language and their experiences and all that stuff. But when we're teaching literacy, you better have your best at the table, and you better be guiding teachers and even a coach that those teachers could work with to make sure that we are on target during the summer when we're teaching literacy. It can't just be we're going to do all the cutesy thing. No. For literacy, those kids need that structured approach to continue.
And what an opportunity. There are communities all over the state of Kansas. During the summer is their time to say, we are here to help. The rec centers, the libraries, the churches, the civic organizations, all of these people have camps and athletic coaches. All of them come together, and they are so willing and eager to help. And not that they aren't during the school year, but it definitely peaks in the summer. And if schools could connect with that and create a camp or a day camp or whatever it is that makes it look like they go to chalk from 8 to 9, and they go to reading with Miss Powers from 9 to, and they have this passport, if you will, of a learning log full of explicit instruction, experiences, strength, like I want to go lift weights. And I think that could be pre-K-12.
Actually, I think we should consider this being a mission for the state of Kansas for the summer of 2026. We will have our 250th birthday next year, my friends, as a country.
Right.
This could be a great way to partner with communities as a country for our kids. And I think it's going to take a little, elbow grease and imagination to pull it together. But I think 2026 could be an opportunity for us to engage school districts to partner with their actual communities.
I love that. So a little challenge to our school districts that, hey, let's reimagine what summer could be. I remember when we were coming out of COVID and we wanted to reimagine what summer could be. I remember someone. I don't know who that would be, Dyane, but I had a conversation with someone. Out of that was born maybe one of the most successful programs ever, and I don't say that lightly, in the state of Kansas for families, called Sunflower Summer.
Yep.
Dyane, talk a little bit about that. And for those of you that are like, I don't quite understand he's hinting around. Dyane Smokorowski was the one that said, you know what, I've been engaged. What people are longing for is a chance to get back together, face to face with their families. Couldn't we create something utilizing the Kansas resources? Still lives on through the Department of Commerce, even long after the COVID money dried up.
So July is going to be a big month for the state of Kansas. Any child who is kinder through 12.
That's correct.
And their families, one adult, if I'm right to say it for this year, are able to go to over 200 attractions across the state at no cost.
No cost.
Free is in my price range, Randy. It's free in yours?
It's free, yes, it is. It is.
And so think about this, my friends. You take your children into Wichita for a Saturday, and you might be able to go to Exploration Place in the morning. You might be able to go to Cowtown in the afternoon. And then on Sunday, you might be able to hit the dinosaur park down in Derby. There's options all the way around. What it really comes down to is when we do these virtual field trips around the school year, and I'm doing things on Kansas Day, we've tapped into the Home on the Range Museum all the way over to things that are in Dodge City. I built relationships with a lot of these attractions, and I said, you know what? I think there's an opportunity to bring families directly to these places. That's where the seed dropped, and I will say that Dr. Watson picked it up and took that conversation much more on an amplified level. But no other state has this. No other state has this opportunity. as long as you have a child in the school district, not even a school district, you could be a homeschool family. You could
Just
be.
have to live in Kansas.
You just have to live in Kansas. Private schools, as long as you have a child who is in the kinder through 12 range. And we looked at pre-K, but most of these locations provide free entry for pre-K children anyway. You have to have an adult to go with you. The adult and the children get in free. And even if you are doing a co-op of 4 or 5 families, like on Mondays I keep your children, Tuesdays you take them, we just have to rotate who the adult is in the Sunflower Summer app for the day, and then you can take the children.
So I look at that and go, okay, how could that be incorporated in for kids whose parents can't take them?
Right.
Because it still goes back to literacy, because it's building that background knowledge, which you have to comprehend, and that vocabulary. So it's like, how could we take some of those really cool free events and bus kids there, get kids, that's the best learning.
Right.
How do we do that for kids who are disadvantaged, who aren't, by no fault of their own, they're not going to get to do those things. Right. How do we make it happen for them?
You just have to rotate the big person, the adult of the day. So even if your church.
So how would you systematize that if the parents couldn't? Like, how could we do that? As
High
part of summer
schoolers.
school even.
What a perfect opportunity for high schoolers to hop on the bus with brother and sister or with neighbor, and the high schooler be the quote adult, but they get in for free as well.
Well, if you're high school, you get
Yeah.
into the app anyway.
Right.
But like I was talking, there was a teacher in Wichita, high school teacher. She said, my students haven't even been to the other side of Wichita.
Right.
So I'm looking at this going, it's not that it's that far away. They still don't have access for one reason or another. How do we fill that gap for them and make sure they get those experiences?
So a couple ways, right? We could think about this. Obviously, it can be any adult, so grandparents, aunts, uncles. Reach out to churches and say, would you like to volunteer? Teachers could also do this. I mean, school, we talked about the time we created it, where schools actually could take kids and the teachers would be. So there's lots of ways to do it. What I found in Sunflower Summer and I went to a variety of venues. One was camping out, where you could camp out for several days in one of our parks. Literally, parents said to me, we would not have had a vacation. We could not afford a vacation. This is our vacation. Sunflower Summer provided us free activities, and we love it because it in some ways, it forced us, when we were sitting around saying, well, we can't afford the vacation, this allowed us to be with our kids and do meaningful things. And they were, I mean, it was overwhelmingly joy, because you could do it on weekends, you can do it at night, you could also during the day. So depending on even shift work, I think, Jerry, it's just our imagination, right? I mean, we need to, and if a kid doesn't go with another family or carpool another family, but I think there are things out there for parents to re-engage with their kids. And so we just have a few minutes left. I want to kind of go around the horn. Summer slide, I'll come back to that. We're now going to talk directly to parents in the last 3 to 4 minutes. So this is kind of a lightning round. What message do you want to give to parents for this summer? That they, I'll just go. I'll just open it up. Who wants to go?
When I taught middle school in April, I would always send, February, March, I'd always send home a plant with the students, and I said, you're going to bring it back on the last day of school. And you can ignore it, you can throw it away, you can lose it, you can water it, you can do whatever you want to with it, but on the last day of school, I want you to bring it back. And we journaled about it. I was an English teacher, so we journaled about it. We took pictures of it. It's kind of like a Flat Stanley kind of activity. And then at the end of in the last day of school, they brought it back, and some went missing, some were completely dead, some were bearing wonderful blooms of great things, some had been replanted. And my objective of that lesson was manyfold, but one of them was to, if you ignore something for 8 weeks and you don't water it and you don't pay attention to it and you don't replant it when it needs to be replanted, we're going to lose it. And so I'm trying to convince that to my middle schoolers. If you don't continue this learning and water your brain and connect with other people and find sunlight and all of these things, you're not going to grow to where you're supposed to grow. And so my message to parents would be, invest in your plants and let them grow. Get outside, play, find authentic time, connect with your kids, have your kids connect with other kids, because that is when true growth occurs.
Excellent.
I'm going to say let's talk the tech side of it all. Many of us are using AI at this point, and if you're using ChatGPT, there's a way now to take a photograph and it can read what's in that photograph. So you could open up your closet of your game closet, or if you have a few markers or leftover things from the school year, put them all on the tables, take a photo and say, ChatGPT, what can I create with this? And here's other materials, like we have paper plates and a few things. What are some great things that we could create? So you could start great conversations. And what are great questions I could ask my child as they are trying to figure out what to do with these things? I would look at that. I would look at Capstone Publishers. They do a great summer K-5 reading element that has books that are free, plus extension activities, and these books read aloud to children. So those are kind of cool. And the third thing that I would look at is, again, I would look at Common Sense Media. There is a great parent section on what games are out there, or giving reviews of games, videos, podcasts, movies, books, so that you can help make the best informed decision for your child.
That's great. And before we get to Jerry, all of those things Dyane just mentioned will be in the show notes. So if you're listening to that, go to the show notes and we'll document that for. How about literacy? What do you want to advise to parents this summer?
I would say to parents, I know how hard it is when you are with your kids all summer, or if you can't be with your kids and you're at work. Parents have to make a lot of tough decisions, and they're gut-wrenching. I know as a mom, there's a lot of tears that get shed because you feel like you fall short. And I think one of the hardest things in the summer is trying to establish a little bit of structure, because it's just becomes this free-for-all in the summer, and you're having fun and you're going places and you're trying to work though, and it's still stressful for parents. Look at how many moms, when the kids go back to school, they're feeling pretty good about it. But if you could find just a little time every day to talk with your child, I mean that conversation back and forth, it builds that relationship, and it really helps their language development. We're seeing a lot of kids they're really struggling with language, that receptive and expressive. And if you can have just a little bit of time where you read to them, you read a little bit, they read a little bit, or you're just reading out loud to them. And if you struggle to read, like Dyane was saying, there's a lot of things with technology that can fill that gap. And I would say that Reading Rockets is a great resource to go to for literacy. And they also have a program, it's called startwithabook.org. And I am fascinated by this, because you start with a book. Say your kids want to learn about bugs, or even daycare providers. They give you some books to start with, and then all these different activities from science to art that you can do. And so if your children are in daycare, that may be something the daycare doesn't know anything about. I guess my hope for parents is that we can provide more support for them, for those parents who don't feel like the school listens, or they're intimidated by the school system, that they would feel welcome, so that we could build that relationship and help them.
That's excellent. I think we could talk another hour around this topic. Topic has been Summer Slide. I want to thank Dyane Smokorowski, Brent Wolf, Jerry Powers, part of our K-Toy team now and forever, giving good sage advice of what schools and what parents can do this summer as we accelerate learning, thinking about all the great things that we can do together. I want to thank all of the listeners for tuning in, and we look forward to talking to you and with you next time on another episode. But if you like this podcast, like us and drop a note. And again, all the things that we talked about today will be in the show notes. So thanks, everyone. Look forward to talking to you next time.